absorb that.
Meeting out for another our next meeting. I can't remember what it was now. I just wrote myself a note, like, really? I have to find something else to put on there. So you come back over the time.
You can find some shit that you keep an eye on. So allowing her to.
Hey, are you on the stream? Okay. How does the audio sound? This is a test, and there should be minimal lag. And am I choppy? Perfect. Then we're good to go.
Wait, I also want to do a.
Oh, crisp and clear in me. Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah. Sylvia's setting up the focus, so I'll stand back over. Okay, that's all I need to know.
Has it been 1 minute?
Yep.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
You can hear me back there okay? All right. It is nice to see you. Nice to be here. Little small in numbers today. Small but mighty. Was that you, Michelle? Thank you. Listen, I'm not going to put you on the spot and have people come up here because I know that's kind of shutting down wanting to participate. But I do want you to participate today. And throughout this meeting, see if you can come up with one question that you have. Remember how Renee Hill was here? Remember when Renee did that? All right. But we won't make you come up here and share that question. So you can not worry about that, but think about a question at the end. We'll go through and answer that questions or the questions for the whole group. And welcome to all those who are joining us live stream this morning. Another great board meeting last night, kind of long, but it was actually got a lot done. I commend the board for making the decisions they make and keeping leading us down this road that we're on. And there's a lot of things if we can.
You can point.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so I'm actually going to start right here at the very bottom. Yesterday we had the executive director from Western Municipal Water District come out and recognize 3 of our teachers who wrote grants and who were recognized. And you have the teacher who retired last year, Sherry Harris from Arlington High School, but she came back to receive the recognition. Of course, the grant and the work's continuing at Arlington High School. Without her, she recruited people to keep down this path. You have from Victoria Elementary and Mountain View Elementary School, and we're just really grateful for the partnerships that we have throughout the community with Western Water Municipal and folks like that to come in. So we had a nice presentation and recognition to start off our meeting last night. And so I just wanted you to know that. Then the other thing, I'm going to go back and forth, that we discussed different MOUs. Those are Memorandum of Understanding. For years, we have had this great partnership with our Riverside Educational Enrichment Foundation, REEF. And it started a few years ago. We're very grateful for REEF and what they've done. They've been in existence for 20 years, and I think they've gifted back to our district $2.5 million, and that's a lot of money. But there's always the but. A few years ago, I met several superintendents that have foundations in their district, and you hear about Pasadena, who's smaller than us, and I know it's a different location, but they have a foundation that gives to them every year about $15 million, pays for their arts programs, pays for their summer school. You hear about Claremont, their foundation gives to their district, smaller than us, a couple million, stuff like that. And so we learn from them. How are you doing that? What do you do? And you hear about the district and the foundation work closer together, and the district hired an executive director, and they changed bylaws for both the foundation and the district and things such as that. Well, we tried that last year. We hired an executive director. We pay for them. They work with foundation. But the goals, the way you've done stuff for 20 years, they just didn't really line up. And so we've decided, mutually agreed with the REEF president, that we're just going to go back to the way it was. Very workable. We're very grateful for what they've done. They really are focused on giving grants to our teachers. That's really the purpose. It's more of a granting board than some of the big dollar boards or some of the big foundations where you bring in big money. So we're going to go back and continue to be really more of a granting foundation, continue to work with teachers. They'll continue to do things, and we'll support them. Like coming up in a couple of weeks is the Citrus Classic. That's the bike ride. Of course, you have the golf tournament that I believe several folks support in the summertime, late spring. You have the best event ever at the Fox Theater that happens in the spring. And so what we decided last night is there was a clause in the MOU that either party with a 30-day written notice could terminate the agreement. And so we started that last night, and so 30 days will go till November-ish. And so we're going to go back to the way it was. And again, we both agreed to do that, and that was done last night. I will let workforce agreement. Who was that? Was that Lynn? I'll let Lynn come up and talk about workforce agreement.
Good morning. I happen to know how long the meeting was, so this will be brief. Because I bet you there's another slide.
Yeah.
Oh, I was right. So this agreement was brought to us through our board president, Dr. Angelo Farouk, who was recently appointed at the state level for the Workforce Development Board. It's very exciting. And we have an agreement with them now, formalized, that our partnership will go strong on a couple of elements. One is the development of internship, job services, and job opportunities for our students and or families. Also, it was mentioned that this agreement will help us look at workforce trends so that as we're providing education to our students, it's relevant, it's timely, and it looks to preparing them for future opportunities that will exist. So that was exciting too. So that is the Workforce Development Memorandum of Understanding that was signed last night.
Okay, very good. May, if you want to come up. We also, Ms. Kakish led a couple of things. There's a resolution that we discussed last night in regards to what the state's wanting to do up and down the state, as well as talk about a naming of a facility at North High School.
Good morning. I think somebody else was.
Which one? Okay, I'll do that.
Okay, so AB 320, I'm sorry, SB 328, which is a Senate bill that had gained momentum regarding the start time for high school and middle school students. And we've opposed it from the beginning as California School Board Associations, as California School Administrators Association, and as Riverside Unified School District. The problem is that it went and got approved by both houses at the legislator level, and now it's sitting at the governor's desk to be signed. He has up to October 13th to sign that bill. And what that bill does is it mandates local districts to have the high school students not come into school any earlier than 8:30, and the middle school students not come into school any earlier than 8 o'clock, which is, there's a lot of research that goes about how sleep helps achievement and all of that. The problem is in our district, we believe with a 67% free and reduced population, our families are still going to get up probably on, early in the morning to commute to work, and they will find somehow, some way, a space for their children to be at. So they're not going to get any more sleep, possibly, to do that. And so with that, we believe it's going to really increase childcare to our families, but also for our district, it's going to limit our flexibility to how we do transportation and make it efficient to contain the cost of transportation. As you know, transportation is a program that's underfunded in our district and has been throughout the state since the 80s. And so with that in mind, we believe it really restricts district and it could possibly increase cost. And so without with it not being signed by the governor, what we thought we would do to make it even more strongly encourage the governor is we took a resolution and the board signed off on the fact that we really oppose this Senate bill and we would really like you to veto the bill. So we did send a letter originally to oppose it, and we hand-delivered it. We will be hand-delivering this resolution to and we will keep you updated to see if it actually passes. If it does pass and the governor signs it into law, it will be in effect in July 1st, 2022. So that's regarding this Senate bill. Is there any questions that I can answer as we go? I see you shaking your heads agreeing. Yes?
Yeah, we have a question from the listeners. If you get, let's see here, sorry. Can you ask if it will apply to continuation schools?
It will apply. The question is, does it apply to the continuation school? It will apply to all students that are 9 through 12 with regards to the 8:30, and all students that are 7 through 8 with regards to the 8 o'clock. It doesn't matter what type of school setting we have. As long as they show up to school, that will be the time.
Okay, thank you, Mace.
All right.
Some decisions are best to keep at the local level. Can you imagine, Humboldt, California, all the way down to San Diego, same kind of decision for starting schools. This state geographically is so very different, you know. And last night, Dr. Farouk, our board president, I thought he did a really good job. He said, you know, he's talking about himself. He grew up in a single parent household, a mom with a younger sister, or I think maybe 2 younger sisters. I don't remember the number. But it doesn't matter when school started. His mom worked in manufacturing on the assembly line, woke up early, took him and his sister to a neighbor's house, dropped him off, who took him to school every day. And she's leaving the house at a really early hour. And so he's saying, you know, this all may be good intentions. One size doesn't fit all equally, and that should be a local decision. And so we'll see what happens, but it's on the governor's desk. We're opposing it, but if it goes into law, we'll figure that out come 2022. And there's a cost to it too, because it affects, can you imagine just all the shuffling that's going to go on for that? So anyway, all right, let me talk about Coach Leathers. Does anyone know Coach Leathers? Remember Coach Leathers? Long-time track coach at North High School. Great guy. I had a chance to spend a little bit of time with him. And he had some amazing athletes and teams. North High School was known up and down the state throughout the nation for just the quality of athletes. I remember Shantae Howard. She was a little pill at Central Middle School, but then she's in the Olympics winning medals for the high jump. And then you had, her name just skips me, the sprinter, who's the gold medalist too from North. It'll come, but she also was at North High School. So great work. A few of you are trying to help me out there. But great work, great teams. And so there is a board subcommittee. They call it a naming committee. And anytime any facility owned by a district is given a name, it needs to go to that committee, and then that committee recommends to the whole board. So you have the Lou Vanderzeel multi-purpose room at Central. That's the process that followed. You have the Art Littleworth Theater at Poly. That's the process that followed. Well, to name the track and field after Coach Leathers at North High School, the board took action last night collectively to do that. And so now over the course of the next several months, Sergio San Martin and his team will do what they need to do to, on the track scoreboard, the Charles Leathers field, and at the concessions, the Charles Leathers track and field. And so that was also done last night. And it was fun to see several of the old-time North staff members in the audience who actually filled out the application and submitted it, saying, will the board consider that? And it went through, and so it was fun to see that last night. So that was a plus for us and for Coach Leathers and the work that he has done. All right, this next one, Tim Martin talked last night. Tim Walker. Tim Martin's retired. He was home last night with his wife. Anyway, Tim Walker talked about a district of choice. Are you familiar what a district of choice is? There are ways that you can get into a school district if you don't live in their boundaries. One is through inter-district transfers. If you live outside of the district, it's like international, outside the United States, inter-district, outside our district. And you have to apply every year. And your transfer can be revoked. If you're a little pill and you get suspended or expelled, we're going to say, we love you, but go to your own home. You know, you're a guest over here. If you're a district of choice and you go through that process, you don't need to be released from your previous district, and you can show up and you're with us for the rest of your time in education. And we can't revoke you. Well, we are a district of choice district, and the board took action last night. We've been doing this for maybe, 8 or 9 years to allow another, I think it was 750 kids in for next year under district of choice, 250 each level, K or TK 6, 7, 8, and apply every year. And so there's questions, how many do we get? How many do we lose? And Tim Walker did a good job on talking about that. But it takes formal action to continue to renew that status every year for a district of choice, and he did that. Then I'm going to have Ryan come up and talk. The biggest part of the presentation last night was probably a good 45 minutes on one of the board priorities. The board has 5 board priorities, and one of them deals with the civic character and citizenship-centered board priorities. And Ryan and his team and Tim Walker, they also talked about this last night. And so I'm going to have them go through that. And then we're going to finish up with what constitutes a legal opinion.
Good morning. Good morning.
It's
No,
Joanna Hayes. Do you remember Joanna Hayes? Gold medalist, North High School. 100 hurdles, 2004.
That was supposed to be Sly, but that
No,
didn't work.
that's not Sly.
Yeah. So good morning again. Okay. Civic character and citizenship. We had the opportunity last night to hear a presentation from Kirsten and Jamie talking around one of our 5 district priorities. So just to set context, so our district has set 5 priorities. This is one of 5, and within each priority, you have actions. And within each action, it's meant to get us to that goal of increasing whatever the whatever the priority is we're speaking about. And then within the action, we've identified a lead. And that's the person who's in charge with making sure that the day-to-day work is done and monitored to get us to our goal. Then within that action, there's a plan to do that lead has put together. And that plan has many steps. So if you think about it from a very conceptual framework, so to speak, there's a work plan that has multiple things that we're going to do to reach a goal. And that goal is part of other goals to reach our district priority. So last night we talked about our civic, character, and citizenship priority. And there are really 3 areas that covers. It covers student suspension, it covers student engagement, and it covers civics and character building throughout our district. And we talked to the board about that from a lens of a portrait of a graduate. We have students that enter in preschool at the age of 3, and then by the time they leave as seniors, we teach many different things from core content, reading, writing, social science, all the classes they have to take, to kindergartners, how you sit on a square in a carpet, what it looks like not to touch your neighbor, on the behavior side, how you walk in lines to the library. And then as they go through that continuum, we also talk about what it looks like to be a good family member, a good friend, a good citizen. What does it look like in your community? So those are the things that we talked about. Just a couple of data points. Kirsten, if I go astray here, help me. So within suspensions, our goal was to decrease district-wide suspensions by 0.4%. And that includes all student groups and all age groups. When we talked to the board, they also changed the game, as you know the state does throughout time. So we kept apples to apples, and we compared 2017-18 students that were suspended out of school to 2018-19 students that were suspended out of school 1 time or more. So if I'm suspended for 1 day or I'm suspended for 100 days, it all counts the same. As soon as I'm suspended once, it counts as 1 child. So we compared those apples to apples, and we went down as a district over 0.5%. So compliments to our sites. That is a really big deal. I'm not sure everybody realizes that, so we can clap real quick for all the sites and what they've done. But with a district our size, to go down 0.5% in suspensions, when we know the things that schools are putting into place to help students be successful, sites need to be commended. The challenge is when the state now says, well, no, not only is it just out of school, but now it's out of school and in-school suspensions. So as a teacher, if I'm having a problem with a student, that student leaves my classroom and their teacher is suspended, that now counts in our data. So when the state changes the game, typically they'll go back and create a new baseline or new goals for us. We're just waiting for that to happen. So then we shared with the board our different groups, and we know the board asked some really good questions about different groups of students. Why is one group being suspended more than other? For example, there is a higher number of African American students or a higher number of foster students compared to some other groups. Why is that? And that's part of what that work plan team is working on. And school sites are setting goals to look at their what we call disproportionate, or where numbers don't match up and don't align. The schools are looking at what skills and strategies can they teach to help students be more successful. And the last thing the board talked about is what about the number of students? So if you have, for example, a Hispanic number, we have thousands of students that meet that number. But if you look at foster, we have less than 100. So when you talk percentages, keeping in mind, when you move a percentage for 10,000 students, very different than if I move a percentage for 35 students. So just that percentage game, just to keep in mind the number of students. So we talked about with suspensions, and then with suspensions, Kirsten also talked about some of the strategies. How are we going to help teachers be more prepared to deal with students? It's a different student now that enters at kindergarten than entered 5 years ago or even 10 years ago. They have different needs and different things that we need to help with. So working on that, supporting teachers, we talked about positive behavior intervention, PBIS. You may have heard of that. We talked about restorative practices. You hear teachers or kids will come home and say, we had a circle meeting in class today, or we had a circle meeting with a counselor. Those are the things that they're talking about. So just finding ways through suspension to help students be more successful in school. Then we transitioned and we talked about civics. And we talked about what does it look like to have a civics plan TK-12. So the elementary side, we talked about character building programs. So things in our district, we've heard about character counts. We've heard about Leader in Me. We've heard about Avid Elementary. All of those programs teach students the things that we need to be successful in school. How to be a good friend, how to listen to an adult, how to walk in a line without hitting the person in front of me, how personal boundaries, all of those things that are taught, we hope, when you teach those TK6, by the time they get to middle school, we can begin to transition that program and reward for positive behavior that we're seeing, but also now start talking to students about what does it look like to engage civilly? How do I help my community? How do I give back? What are some problems of practice that I can support either my school, my grade level, or even the town in which I live? So we talked about that. We talked about when we get to high school, looking at social issues. There are so many things that our high schoolers are facing today. And if you really want to get to the root of how to solve them, sometimes we think we're really good and we can help, but you go ask some 16 and 17-year-olds what we need to solve X problem, and they're brilliant. So how do we get our students to engage civil-mindedness within that work? And then with that, we talked about the state is looking at a seal of civic engagement. So our district will be on that cutting edge. Carolyn Powers leading that work. To when that happens, our students, if they meet the criteria set by the state when they leave, on their diploma will be a seal of civic engagement to show that they were very civilly minded and giving back. And there's criteria to go with that. So look forward to that coming in the future. And the last piece, we talked about engagement. We talked about School Plus 2. We talked about Strengths Academies. Our district is way ahead of the curve than many districts around us with building on this asset mindset of what students come to school. We're going to build on that and make them stronger. So we talked a lot about how we're measuring School Plus 2 in the work plan. All of our middle schools and high schools are working diligently to find ways to identify students that are connected and making sure that's helping us have positive outcomes both academically and behaviorally. We talked about student strengths and the work we are leading. And then the last part we talked about was how does all of that come together from student engagement and civics with a frame of, as teachers being more successful in the classroom, to then how does that fit back to address behavior? Because if you think about it, all of those things, if that's positive, if I'm engaged and I'm connected and I'm doing well, I am most likely to have less behavior challenges in the classroom. So that's the lens that we're looking at with the presentation. And it went on for quite a while in depth, but it could have gone on for several hours with the amount of work that is taking place. So just kudos to the team and appreciate what they've done. And you will have more updates every board meeting coming forward on the rest of the district priorities. That was a lot, but any questions before I step aside? Are we good?
You're all thinking of questions, right?
Thank you.
Okay. And then actually the last item, 2 board meetings ago, it was the first board meeting in September, there was a question that was brought up that what constitutes a legal opinion. And so last night we had an attorney there, our general counsel from Fagan, Friedman, Fulfrost, that just helped the board understand that. And there's a variety of things. Sometimes it's through an email, sometimes it's verbally, sometimes it's a form, and I learned something last night. I didn't know law firms have malpractice insurance. And so if you're an attorney and you give a wrong opinion and it costs the client money, they have insurance to cover those oops that might happen. And so that's how we finished up. It wasn't that lengthy of an item, but it helped the board understand, because the board from time to time seek second or third legal opinions. And so we just circled back from 2 meetings ago and had Chris Keeler come up and talk about that. So that was the board meeting last night. Am I leaving anything out? All right. So do this. Take 30 seconds, 60 seconds. You each get 30. Turn to a shoulder partner and talk about what are some questions or what are some questions that you came up with from the presentation this morning, all right? 60 seconds, go ahead and talk. Okay. What? Let's have a couple questions. And there's no. All questions are good because if you have it, there'll be some others that probably wonder. So any questions? You got volunteered, Cheryl. Someone's pointing at you.
I think it's called voluntold.
Voluntold. What question?
We all pretty much had the same question when Dr. Lewis was talking about the civic character and citizenship. In there, anywhere in light of what happened in Moreno Valley, are they going to address bullying and defining bullying and what to do to it?
Okay, come on over here, Dr. Lewis, and because folks on the camera, so repeat the question so everyone can hear it, and then answer it.
Thank you. So, Kirsten, gladly. So the question was, in light of recent events in Moreno Valley and multiple communities around us, the concept of bullying and what are we doing to support our students, was that part of the presentation? And it was. So just to keep in context, I just gave a very surface what we went over, but when we talk about suspensions, a big piece of that is how we help students deal with their own behavior and consequences and situations they have at school. So we talk about bullying, that is absolutely part of what the work plan is working on, but also when you go back to the school sites, what they are working on. And then through students, pupil services that Kirsten and Tim and Raul are working on, is how do we make sure we're supporting not only the schools and the assistant principals and the teachers and the students, but the families. What are our procedures? So that is something that, two things we're doing. One, we always learn. So when something happens near us, it becomes a case study. We look at, we communicate, we all have counterparts, we support them as much as needed, but then we learn from their experience and what we can bring back to prevent, to the best of our ability, something like that happening in our district. And then second, we find bright spots. We go to our schools, we talk to our principals, we talk to our assistant principals and say, where is it working really well? And then we share that practice across our district. As well as we're looking at how do we report. There are many ways for students and families to report any incidents of bullying, whether it be online or at each school site. So bringing those back to the forefront to remind our students they have multiple ways to share with the adults if they have something that they need our support with. That's a great question. Thank you.
Matter of fact, I'll just add to that. It was last week or 2 weeks ago, Tim Walker sent out an email, and Kirsten's shaking her head, to all principals, because October is Anti-Bullying Month. And they received several links of activities that you can do in partnership with all the kids and the parent community. He reminded folks that safety is the top of our list, to make sure that you have your drills, your practice in lockdown, you're receiving the ALICE training, that's the active shooter training. And he also then shared with us in Cabinet just Monday that he's working on a video, just a short 90-second video, and it'll be kids talking about this on their campuses. It's going to go out sometime during October, during this month. So we're doing what we can to prevent, to make awareness, to involve our community members, because, you remember 2 years ago, Casaview Elementary School this month, on Halloween Day, we had tragedy there. And so it's something that we continually have on our forefront, and we discuss all the time as a board, at board meetings and in staff. So I commend Tim Walker for being proactive in that team, and all of our principals and school sites that deal with this on a daily basis. So great question. All right, that was one question. A second one from the back of the room. Oh, yes.
Actually, we have a few questions online.
Okay, a few online questions.
So the first one is from Mr. Eric Flatland, and he's asking, how will it affect elementary? And this is in reference to the school start time.
Ms. Kakish? So Eric Fladlin is the principal of Victoria Elementary School. He asked the question about the school start time. Does it affect elementary, or is it just middle and high school? So Ms. Kakish, do you want to come up and address that?
Currently, the Senate bill does not address elementary at all. But what will happen is that if we have to be flexible to make sure that we are efficient with transportation, if it does go into law, it could make our law. We won't do it alone. We won't do it in silo. But I'm just projecting that in order for us to contain cost, we will have to change some of the starting time in other schools.
Thank you. Another question?
Yes, also, does middle school include sixth grade? Also, in reference to the school start time?
Right now, my understanding is it includes
7th and 8th.
7 through 12. Well, some districts have middle school 6 through 8. We don't. So no, in our district, no. It would be middle school, which is 7 through 8. That's how we do it. And then high school. I suspect if you're a district that has middle school 6 through 8 and then 9 through 12, that would apply there. But that's, do you see why it's a local decision, right? And play this out, you guys. What happens every day at a high school at 2 o'clock? All these after-school events, right? And we already have kids having, matter of fact, I know some kids today leaving school early to go to Norco because they have the volleyball tournament. But can you imagine how it's going to just that domino effect all the way through? If you start later, does all that push back, or do they miss more school? Instead of just missing 5th and 6th, are they missing 4th, 5th, and 6th to go to that volleyball game? So again, appreciate what Sacramento's doing, but this kind of decision is locally. The state should not be telling us when to start school. So hope that answered the question. Are there any other questions? One last one.
One more.
All right.
What is schools plus 2?
What is schools plus 2 is the question. Was that something you talked about under civics?
Part of engagement.
Oh, let Dr. Lewis come back up and talk about it.
So briefly, Schools Plus 2 is when, through the LCAP, we've given dollars to the secondary schools to make sure kids are connected and to encourage them to be connected in things outside of just class. So when you consider Schools Plus 2, it's everything from sports to VAPA to clubs to enrichment activities, and we want students to stay connected through all the different experiences. So when you look at a high school, for example, it might be a student who is in theater and serves in the Interact Club and is a student. So they're connected to 2 activities outside of the classroom. That's what we look at by Schools Plus 2. So being encouraged and involved in 2 things outside of the typical academic day. That's Schools Plus 2.
And the boards actually put resources to that. You have to have clubs, you have to have advisors. Sometimes there's stipends that go with that. And so if you want to have more kids involved, you need more of the adults involved. And so that's the resources that are aligned. So good job. I think you guys should applaud all the folks live stream because they saved you from having to do that. So anyway, it's good to see you. Thanks for participating live stream, and hopefully you find these helpful. Our next meeting is October the 15th. It's a study session, and we're going to go on. Remember, I said there's 5 board priorities. We're going to discuss the second one at that next meeting, and so we'll come back and report on that. Okay? All right, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.